Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our first BIST Career webinar. Before we start, let me remind you of some good practices that will help us all have a smooth online experience. First, please make sure your microphone is muted at all times. Secondly, disable your camera and keep it off throughout the whole webinar. In third place, please take note that if during the discussion you have any questions, we will be collecting all these questions through our chat function, which can be found at the right side of your screen. Use a private chat to send your questions to the user BIST. I will make sure to compile these questions and share them with our speakers during our Q&A. Before presenting today's session, I would like to take this opportunity to put this webinar in context and introduce the framework that BIST, together with the 7 BIST centers, are putting together in the area of career development. We are developing a series of actions for our researchers in order to support professional progression beyond academia. BIST is highly committed to promoting that the scientific talent that is being developed at the BIST centers is transferred and has an impact by adding value to other sectors such as industry, public policy, and education. For that, BIST will be organizing a series of webinars such as this one to share the experiences of researchers who have continued with their professional paths in different roles and sectors, and share useful and necessary information on how to approach these turns in careers. We are, of course, open to ideas and suggestions of topics which satisfy your interests, so feel free to reach out to us at any time with any comments or suggestions. And with that, we can get started. For this webinar, we have prepared a session in which we get the chance to learn from the opinions and personal experiences of 3 experts in scientific careers. But more specifically, we'll focus on careers in the areas of project management and business development. We'll discuss questions such as how can a scientific background fit well into other roles beyond academia? Or take down myths, such as the one that taking a position in industry implies not having succeeded as a researcher. These and many other interesting insights are the ones that our guest speakers will be discussing. And who are our guest speakers? Let me briefly introduce them to you. With us, we have Dr. Pedro Grima, who is Portfolio and Innovation Advisor at FARRE. Also joining is Dr. Sara Ricardo, who is a business developer at Qmenta. And last but not least, we have Neus Vidalta, who is Human Resources Technician at the Institute for Bioengineering of Catalunya. And with that, I invite Pedro to take the lead and welcome him to speak.
Hi, I hope you are listening to me properly. Excellent. So when I was invited, I was thinking the best way to share with me my journey as a scientist in pharma industry is by going through the steps I've been doing in my professional career and putting some key messages, key lessons learned through my journey. I really advise you to discuss with as many people as you can what has been their journeys as a scientist, as a professionals, because you can go through my LinkedIn and see what has been my professional positions, but this is just the what. What I want to discuss with you today is the why and the how I have been dealing with my journey as a chemist. So I'm chemist by training. I studied organic chemistry in the University of Barcelona. I get a PhD at the University of Barcelona, and my first professional decision was to do a postdoc, an industrial postdoc. I wanted to get specialized in what at that time, 20 years ago, was a quite trend on the field, that was combinatorial chemistry. So I moved to a postdoctoral position in Bayer, in the Central Research Facility of Bayer in Leverkusen, where I focused on combinatorial chemistry. I tried to get a full position there after my postdoc, as many as usual. If you like that position, I like that position very much. So I wanted to spend to get a full position there. I didn't succeed to get that position, and this is my first take-home message. And I would say that is, you never know. So I think that time was quite a crisis time. It was just after the September 11th. It was a very uncertain time, like this one here with COVID-19. So I didn't get that position. I didn't know what was going to be with my professional career and so on. So I did my best to get that position at Bayer. I didn't get it. So I returned to Spain, and 3 weeks afterwards, one section head of Bayer moved to a position in a different company in Holland, Organon in Holland, and they are looking for people, and they recruit me immediately. So within a couple of weeks, I had a position at another company in another country. So really, I think when you are looking for a position, you try to do as much interviews as you can, because you never know when is going to be the right time. It's always said that you have to be in the right time, in the right moment, and you didn't feel that when this is really happening. In my case, I was feeling really depressed after I failed my interviews at Bayer. It was at that time my dream work, and within 3 weeks I had an even better job at another company. So first message. I spent 6 years in Holland working at Organon, specializing as a medicinal chemist. So organic chemist involved in the development of new drugs in a large pharmaceutical company. After 6 years, I took probably the most important personal decision in my career, that was to return to Spain. I returned because of personal reasons. I have who is my wife at this moment. At that time, she was looking for a position in Holland. She didn't get it. So at the end, we wanted to be together, so I returned to Spain. And I did many interviews. It took me a solid year to get the opportunity to return to Spain. And here it comes my second message. During that solid year, my only thought was, I only have to succeed once. I only have to get one interview, pass this very last interview. So, and every interview that I did, I think that there were six different, I interviewed for 6 different positions. At every different interview that I did, each interview made me a little bit stronger, a little better in preparing the next one. So this is my second message. So do not consider, when you apply for a position and you might not get it, do not consider a failure. Just consider a learning experience, because it makes you stronger for the next one. So I at the end, I got a position. Almiral, Laboratorios Almiral offered me a position to return to Spain. So I returned as a senior scientist, still as a researcher, as a chemist in research, as a senior scientist. And a couple of years afterwards, I moved to Ferrer in a kind of much more managerial position as a section head of one of the medicinal chemistry labs of the research center of Ferrer. I spent 5 years in Ferrer, and there come probably the most important change that I didn't ask for, but it came with my professional career, was the change from going from researcher, scientist to project manager. And this, at that time, 10 years ago, I would say that was a quite standard path. Organizations that are quite functional, either you go from researcher, then lab head, section head, departmental head, you move in the functional technical scale. And when you go up enough, so at the top positions, then the other way to grow is by getting responsibility on projects. So 10 years ago, the position of project manager was a kind of secondary position. You get that on top of. because you cannot grow more in the functional area, so you get a position as a project manager. And here comes my third message. This is not anymore that way. Just I want you to do not misunderstood, do not underestimate the role of project management. 10 years ago, it was a secondary discipline, I would say. Nowadays, and for the future, it's going to be and it's going to be a full discipline. It's recognize the role and the potential of the project manager. And I like very much the title of this webinar, talking about the scientist project manager, because I really think that is very, very important, this combination of science and project management. In fact, they share a lot of commonalities. As a scientist, we deal with curiosity, honesty, rigorosity, objectivity, excellence, continuous learning. All these topics, all these concepts, you can apply direct on the discipline of project management. But even more important, nowadays we are dealing with problems, scientific challenges that are not simple and are not easy. They are difficult, they're really difficult. And for solving difficult challenges, you need excellent scientists, but they are also complex. And for complexity, you need coordination and collaboration. And for that, you need great project management. So in fact, I think that the combination of scientific background and project management skills, it's a winning position nowadays and in the future. As a project manager, now I'm working almost 8-9 years as a project manager. As I realized that I've discovered that you became the kind of jack all of trades. In Spanish, we would say el hombre orquesta, because depending on the environment, you get a different position. In a standard pharma like Ferrer, Almiral, this kind of pharmas, you need soft skills and you need scientific excellence. Scientific excellence to understand, to really get along with the scientists, the internal scientists. But nowadays, open innovation is in every single aspect of our work in pharma industry. And you need also this scientific background to really collaborate and coordinate with academia and research institutes. I've been working also in a virtual pharmaceutical company, a very small pharmaceutical company where we externalize most of our work. There you also need coordination, drive, ambition. You can a kind of sense of entrepreneur sense. And for that, when you bring an entrepreneur to the logistics, to the common activities, you really need a project manager for that. And nowadays I'm working in the ideation and the project management and the portfolio management of Ferrer. And for that, my skills, I think that my skills as a scientist just built on top of the skills that I have as a project manager. So in this sense, I would like to give you the final message that as a scientist, you can incorporate the skills of project management. And let me be very clear by saying incorporate. I'm not saying you are jumping to another position as a project manager. You are not changing to a position in project management. You are adding on top of your science the skills of project management, because on the other way around, I think that's impossible. You cannot teach a manager, you cannot teach them the savoir-faire, the little things, the skills that we as a scientist have been grown through our degree, our PhD, our postdoctoral positions. This is something that you just simply cannot learn. Either you have that in your background or you cannot get it. So as a final comment, as a kind of summarize, if I can summarize that, everything, if you look up for a professional career in the industry, I like to give you one very clear message. Be positive. You never know. You never know when is the right time at the right moment. So try as much as you can. There will be always opportunities in our at least in the pharma industry. There will be always opportunities, and think that it only has to succeed once. Every interview that you don't make it is just a learning experience for the next one. And consider the career as a professional project manager as a potential career for you. I think it's one of the future of researchers in the industry. And the very last one, do not think too much on the long term. Think on the next 5 years. Companies, industries, they generate business plans for the next 5 years. We don't know that we live in a volatile and uncertain environment, so you don't think, and companies doesn't know where they are going to be in the next 10 years. So just think, plan your career in, I would say, in cycles of 5 years in a row. And that's it. If you have any questions, I think that at the end of the speeches, we can discuss them. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Pedro. I've been collecting the questions, as we said, and then at the end of the session, we'll bring them all up so the discussion is richer. So thank you so much for your first intervention. And next in line is Dr. Ricardo.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
So hello, everyone. I hope that you can all listen to me well. Thank you, Pedro, for your experience. My experience is a bit different from Pedro, and I think that's quite nice because then we have kind of a mix of experiences for the same, let's say the same endpoint, but very different experiences. So my career is actually been very much up until 2 years ago, very much an academic, classical academic career. So I'm original from Portugal. I moved to London to do my PhD in what was the National Medical Institute of Medical Research, which was a fantastic institute. From there, I moved on to New York to do my postdoc in NYU Medical Center. And then I moved to Barcelona with Ramon and Cajal to start my own lines of research. I must say that I liked very much, and I liked very much leading teams. I liked very much leading my small team. And I do enjoy science very much. And I think the reason why I never really considered transitioning before is precisely because I do like science a lot, and I've always done, and I do like leading teams. But a bit after maybe, I don't know, 3 years in on my appointment as in here, I realized that I was not feeling as motivated as before, and I just wasn't feeling that that's what I wanted to continue doing in the future. I started to feel very pulled in other directions. I started feeling that I wanted to do not just one research project, but instead be involved in many different projects, have more variety. I wanted to be doing more strategy, organizational development, strategy for organizations, working with different organizations and across organizations, as well as working with more people. So I didn't want to just work with my own team. I wanted to have another type of work. So as I started to kind of feel that way, I don't know, I started to explore a bit more. And so what I've done, and this was also for personal reasons, I couldn't just drop my job and figure myself out. So I figured myself out while I was doing still my job. And so I was, at the same time as I still was leading my team and doing research and helping my students do research and enjoying it still, I decided to start exploring. I started exploring within myself what I wanted to do, what all these ideas that I was having and all these, what I was being pulled for, if this was really, what did this mean, what type of positions were out there. And then I also started to do a lot of other projects. So I want to talk about two things that I think are important in my circumstances, in my situation, in my profile, which is I decided to move away from academia in a late phase. So this is a bit different from other situations. And so that was a challenge, and I needed to find a way of doing that in which it was successful. And at the same time, I also, I'm a foreigner here, right? So when I decided to move sectors, I also did not have a very big network inside, within the city. So I also needed to develop my own network. So those are two things that I think are absolutely key for moving. One is the network. Networking, as you all heard, is extremely important, and is even more so when you are at the late, let's say, more senior level in your career, more advanced stage of your career. And why is that? Is because the way that people look at you, and this is normal, is, you know, just one accepts that it's perfectly normal, is that you have a certain profile. I mean, I had worked, when I decided to move away from academia, I had worked for 15 years, even plus 15 years in academia with a very academic profile. And so I need to prove myself and be able to have the way to explain to people and tell my narrative in a way that I can explain to people I can do other things. And what is interesting is that those other things sometimes are things that you have been doing in academia. So it's just a way of changing your narrative, changing the way you explain it. But that requires a little bit of a change of profile. So how can you make others see you in a slightly different way, as well as a way to make that profile visible to others. So this is something that I've done, and I've used the way that I've done that also because I wanted to explore within myself where I wanted to go. So I had an idea, but I wanted to explore it further. And so what I've done is done several projects in a volunteer basis with many, many different people in many different organizations. So I've tried many things. And I've done many things. I've created workshops, I function as a speaker, I worked in projects, I even set up a small company for a little bit of time. And this has allowed me two things that were instrumental for my transition. One was I met a lot of people, and as Pedro said, this is very important. The number of people you talk to everyone, and it's not to ask anyone. You don't, try not to do that. It's to create relationships, understand, listen to people, learn from them. And then as you learn, you also learn from, within yourself, okay, yes, this makes sense. This is, I can adjust now my profile with these ways of saying it, and I can adjust my CV with these, highlighting this and that. And so these people that you meet and the work that you put out, suddenly you get to a point in which you start having different things to show. And at that point, you also, have something that you can tell people, yes, I can do that job. I can do your partnerships. I can do your business development. So I've realized that exactly, what I wanted to go for. And business development is in fact that, is creating partnerships. So what we do, what we do is we are there to find opportunities and nurture those opportunities to create relationships so that you grow your business, right? So I work in a startup. In a startup, you do a bit of everything, and we can discuss that further. But basically, you use a lot of the skills that you already have from academia. So let me just finish up of how I actually did that jump. So basically, I was, I had already a profile in which I was, talking to a lot of people. I had a network that I was talking to a lot of people. And one of these people on my network, we were having a coffee one day, and she said, look, we're growing our company, and would you like to send out your CV? And so I said, okay. I wasn't really thinking necessarily of getting a job with that company, but I followed the company. I liked it very much. I liked what they did. And so I sent out my CV, and I went through 2 interviews, and eventually I got the job. And this is also something that is important. There's always this thing that you can't just jump for academia. You need to go through a research position. This is not necessarily true. It's all about how you can explain that your abilities, and that your abilities can be translatable, and you can explain them. You can show them on a CV. You can quantify them. And this is something that I've done on the process of doing my projects and developing my CV. I was actually following up everything. I had a Trello board, and I was following up, and I was quantifying all my activities. And so this is also very useful to have on your CV. You quantify everything that you do, and you show to people what you do, and you tell them, I can do this. And then in the end, business development is about creating partnerships, developing those partnerships, developing the business side, and developing the company. This can be done in the industry, can be done in non-for-profits, but it uses a lot of the same abilities that you have as well already as a scientist. Uses a lot of your critical thinking, a lot of flexibility. Work in a startup, by definition, you have to have a lot of flexibility. You tend to do a lot of jobs at the same time. You use a lot your problem solving. And then your knowledge as a scientist is also very crucial, because you are talking to scientists, right? I work in health tech. I work for people that are doctors and investigators and researchers. You know them, you recognize them, you can define exactly what's going to be your portfolio of the product, because you understand the product, you understand exactly what you're doing, you understand exactly how this is going to be a good partnership, because you understand the science behind it. So these two components of having the ability to work together, as Pedro was saying, together with the ability to understand the science behind and the technical side, this is very, very, I say, very high value for companies. It's not easy to find this balance, especially when you are doing, like in my case, more like technology. It's technology, it's health, and it's also a bit of business. Having all those skills, they're not that easy to find. So scientists have those. So it's an important point. So I would like to probably finish up. I think my time is probably up. And I just wanted to say that this is not necessarily, there's no one way to do these transitions. It has to be adjusted, and we can talk a lot more about this, but it's adjusted to who you are as a person, what are your personal situations, your personal conditions. There's a lot of error. You learn with those errors, as Pedro was saying. You make mistakes, you learn from them. You try a lot, and you keep believing that little by little you will create your path, and even if it's not that path, then you adjust and go into another path. So it is a process, and it's a process that is a continuation to what you've done before. So it's not a different thing, it's just you use what you've done and you continue it for the future, and you adjust it as you go along. And if you make mistakes, you learn from them, you adjust it, reincorporate, and continue, because we can't predict anything. It's what Pedro says. Things are changing. You need to be very adaptable. Adaptability is very, very important. And so you keep on trying. And there's one piece of advice that I was given right in the beginning of me thinking of transitioning, which was from a person that is really, really good high up in the industry. And she told me once, Sarah, you're never really ready. So just go for it. Somebody proposes something to you, you think you can do something, just go for it. You will learn with the experience, and you never know what comes up. So I will finish now and take it to Donna to continue.
Thank you so much, Sara. As mentioned, I've been collecting all your questions, so feel free to keep sending them in the chat. I'm putting them all together, and we'll bring it up at a group discussion later. And thank you again, Sara. And now let me introduce Neus Villalta, who will give us the perspective from the other side of the table, that is from a human resources perspective.
Hello, everybody. So, well, very interesting and excellent contribution from my colleagues. And I think it's a great opportunity to learn from previous researchers' experiences related to job transitions. So now I start with my part as a recruiter perspective, and the objective is to provide you with practical information and advice regarding the HR point of view. I would like to focus and share with you some points about two aspects: how to create or convert your CV, and be prepared for interviews. First of all, you need to convert your academic CV into one that is specifically appropriate for industry, and there are some tips which really work. Note that the formatting and length are the principal differences. It's not always depends on how to write a full CV, but include the main known sections. personal details, a part of name, mobile number, and email addresses. It is relevant, you may include your LinkedIn profile or blog site where employers can find out more about you. Objective is 2 or 3 sentences, summarize and emphasize your key attributes and your intended future career path, using keywords that will attract the recruiter attention. These keywords should be the same ones used in the job advertisement, particularly in the section of job requirements or a specific terminology for the field of the company. This is like the abstract of paper you prepare when you summarize the rest of the publication. The employment history and work experience. Start with your more recent job, detailing your experience concisely in bullet points, for example. Using action verbs also helps to emphasize your description, short and powerful. Achievements include your academic and professional achievement to distinguish yourself from other candidates. For example, did you initiate a project, implement a new technique, or optimize an essay? What was innovative about your job? Try to use at least one specific example for job you've held and explain briefly how it did improve the research or your project. Provide enough information to attract employers to call you, and then you can explain face-to-face the exact details of the task you've undertaken or the skills you have learned. For example, don't just say you were ordering stationery or sample or whatever. You may say responsible for ensuring the laboratory had the necessary resources to operate efficiently. And take advantage of all the participation in collaborative projects in academia groups and maybe with clinical institutions or pharmaceutical companies. At this point, you maybe coordinate and follow up specific projects from the design and write a grant application or presentation the results. Always keep examples relevant to the job you're applying for. That means you have to extract from the job advertising the relevant responsibilities and try to match your skills and abilities and reflect them in your CV. For the education and training section, start with your most recent qualification. Interest include these if relevant to the soft skills needed for the jobs. And other tips that could be valuable: don't be generic, work out who or which industry sector your CV is designed for, and tailor it to highlight the right aspects on your experience for them. Update it using an old CV will look unprofessional, so make sure that yours is regularly updated to meet the requirements for the job you are applying for. Use a template. There are plenty of free resources at the internet that will your CV become easier to read and covers all the most important aspects of your work history. Making your CV fit in one side of a page is a good approach. If you had not had work experience before, or have perhaps just had one job since leaving your study. For most other people, fitting their educational background and various work experience into such a small page is not likely being realistic, but if possible, keep your CV layout to 2 sides or 3 at the most. By using these tips, your CV will create the right impression, take into account that the first person who evaluates your CV is usually someone in the HR unit, and believe me that we receive and have to revise dozens and dozens of CV for each position, and really helps when you have to read a structured one. And relegate your list of publications, posters and presentations from your CV when you are applying a position in the industry, or consider including only most 2 or 3 relevant ones. And sometimes could be many reasons why your CV have gaps, so make sure they are explained in a positive manner. And then in the interview you could explain the details if you were asked. one of you, the first objective of a curriculum of a CD is to attract attention and get the call from the recruiter to agenda an interview. So facing the other aspects, the interview, you should also be prepared for the interview process that is different from that in the academia. And probably this interview will be conducted using the competency-based interview approach. In general terms, the competency-based interview technique is used to find out how you reach or behave in specific situations. During the interview, you will answer on your real-life experience to explain how you perform in the past. Competencies are a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes that can be observed. For example, in a case of a generic role of project manager, competencies could be customer orientation, communication, teamwork, planning, and organizational skills. And you could be asked to talk in detail about a specific experience. These questions usually start with the phrase of tell us about a time when you, or give us an example of a situation where you have to explain the details. You are expected to show that you have demonstrated this competency, giving concrete and detailed examples. When you give examples, make sure that they are specific, measurable, and relevant. And it is recommended to explain a specific event or situation you were faced with and explain the task or challenge involved and your action or reaction to the situation. You took to resolve and then outline the outcome or final results. Remember that the important thing is not a successful result. The important thing is how you overcome or act during the situation. With this type of answer and explanations, you could demonstrate particular interpersonal competency, such adaptability, oral communication skills, planning, and organizational ones. When you describe a problem or situation, put special attention to the action you took to handle it and the results. The interviewer wants to know how closely your competencies and personal traits align with those they listed in the desired or preferred qualifications in the job listing. If the job advert specifically states that the candidate needs to be skilled in planning management without deadlines, take for sure you will be asked how you have mediated similar situations in the past, so be prepared. And sometimes the difference between the candidates is how they prepare this interview. And to prepare for competency-based interview questions, first check the job listed for examples and required skills and abilities. Next, list a situation in which you have demonstrated each of these competencies, and once you have matched a situation for each skill, think of details or example using the situation, the action, and the reaction examples and details, just for be prepared to answer the questions giving a brief, coherent, and structured response to interview questions. For example, while problem solving can be a skill you use in a variety of situations, focus on a time when you had a specific work-related issue in the lab and how you manage it. Do not place blame if you are describing a particular problem or difficult situation. It may feel natural to attack or place blame on another person, but these questions are about you. So focus on what you did to manage the situation, not in another issues or failures. So be confident, humble in talking about the past experience. And don't worry if you haven't heard about this competency approach, but prepare the interview thinking about to highlight your skills in collaboration, teamwork, meeting deadlines, focus on selling the skills you obtain, for example, during your PhD, which requires you to adapt and switch between complex tasks. And I'm sure that during the thesis and the postdoc, you learn many more things than science, and you develop many soft skills, and this should be highlighted in interviews and in the CV. For example, doing talks and conference can be communication skills, or in talking about organizational skills also. I'm sure that a lot of you have to deal with different tasks at the same time: experiments, supervising master students, prepare a report, writing proposals also. Can be writing skills, collaborate with other colleagues from other institutions, with your colleagues at the lab, with the project manager officer for preparing an application. All this is also teamwork. So there are some other examples, so think about it and prepare and tailor it, and tailor your CV with these premises. The important thing is do all this homework, show your interest in understanding the company when you are in the interview, its products, the competitors, future challenges. Normally at the end of the interview, there are a few minutes for the candidates to make and put questions to the interviewers. So use this time for clarification, doubts, and etc. And well, and be consistent and persistent in your pursuit of what you want. It could take time, but it works. And for sure, the first step you take would be the most difficult and complicated, but it not has to be the definite one. Keep in mind, each step will bring you things and learnings, and that sure will be valuable for I think I could end at this point. So Donna, I don't know, maybe it's time that all of us could discuss.
Thank you, Neus. Thank you so much. Yes, as you just mentioned, I would like now to begin with the Q&A. If we don't have enough time, we've been receiving questions that probably take a longer reply by all the speakers. So if we don't have enough time, the speakers were very kind to encourage you to reach out to them through LinkedIn, and they'll be more than happy to reply to you on a personal reply. So if your question does not appear, please feel free to reach out to them, or we will put you in contact as well. So I'm going to start with a question that many had, which is, let's say that it's more or less like two questions put together. So it would be, what skill set is necessary to jump into project management or business development? That is, how can one leverage the skills that you get as a scientist versus somebody who has a degree in economics or in business management? How can you enter into that competition when you're going into industry?
So more than say what are the skills that you need to build on top, I would start with which are the ones that you already have. So as a project manager in the pharma, at least in the pharma industry, and most of our technical, on the STEAM industries, I would say, in the technical industries, at the end you are dealing with projects. Our projects are based on technical skills, on scientific skills. I like to say that you need a common knowledge to manage a project. You need a common knowledge, and this knowledge is based on scientific background. So this is the most important part. From that part, you build the skills in project management that I would separate into parts: some hard skills and soft skills. At the end, dealing with a project, you are dealing with people, with the stakeholders. And at the end, you are dealing with a team, with a series of external and internal resources. And for that, you need some soft skills. I would say communication, empathy, this kind of skills to really manage the stakeholders. And you need some hard skills. And within the hard skills, you need a minimum knowledge on project management, on on the technical side of project management, like risk planification, risk management, how to build a project on itself, how to control, how to execute a project from a managerial point of view. Yeah, so I would say two sort of skills, but do not focus on the technical side of the project management, the risk management, or the how to deal with the timelines, with the scope, with budget, because this is the easy part to learn. You learn that by doing. It's much more important. The soft skills, I would say, is much more important the soft skills.
Yep. If I can add, I completely agree. So for the side of business development is very similar. I think it's the same. So on the soft skills, yes, empathy, communication, being able to understand people, being able to understand different types of stakeholders, being able to talk to them and understand what they need, what's about. And then another thing that it's important to show is that you are able to create a project from its beginning till its end with an output of a successful output, so that you are able to take a project from beginning to end. And anytime that you have done that, anytime that you have done a project, that is important skills to show. Another one that is important is your ability to think critically about the diversity of subjects, right? So that you are able to analyze very many different subjects and able to distill the information that is useful in that information, in those bigger sets of information. So that's another thing. And I think the rest is a bit what Pedro said. So because the project management, in fact, business development is a bit developing relationships so that you do work together, and developing the business. And developing the business is identifying opportunities. So that to identify opportunities, you need to understand your environment. If you are in industry, you need to understand your market, you need to understand your stakeholders, you need to understand your competitors, you need to understand where you're going. And if you understand where you're going, you understand how you can move the pieces. So being a scientist and in your lab, depending on which stage you are, you're going to have some of these experiences. So try to translate that into what was the situation in which you analyzed your environment and we made decisions that created a project that was successful, for example. So that would be one of those cases. So yeah, you need a mix, and this mix is an important one. So very good communication skills, very good empathy, together with very good analytical capacity and organization. You need some organization as well, but I guess you'll have that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Sara. The next question that many people were also asking from your experience and also your opinion is a postdoc a good investment of time if you know you want to go to industry? Or should you just make the jump from the PhD directly?
Sara, you go first.
I personally don't think it's needed. I mean, this is our all personal choices. I mean, Niels probably has better option. Personally, from what I see where I am, you don't need it. I mean, if you have the skills, it doesn't matter. If you have the skills and you can show the skills, that's it. I don't know, Niels, what do you think?
No, well, it depends. Don't think about if it's necessary to go postdoc or not. It's just where you are in your current situation. Just do first the thinking part of what you want to do in your next step in your career. It doesn't matter if it's just when you finish your master, your PhD, or your postdoc. It's just to find just to find the current time that you are sure that you want to go to one way or to continue in the science in the lab. It's not this. Well, it's my opinion.
Yeah. I would say my PhD gave me the opportunity to confront with a scientific problem for 4 years. My postdoc gave me the opportunity to go into another problem and deal with that for 1 year. So a postdoc position gives you the opportunity to deal to grow by dealing with different scientific problems. So that in that sense, I think I do not regret at all doing the postdoc the other way around. So I would do it again. So because of that, because you get the opportunity to get into another, to deal to solve a different scientific problem from the one you did on your PhD. And I would say also that if you think that you don't want to do a postdoc because you want to go right away into the industry, into a position, do not think that is that necessary. So life is really long, so you have a lot of time to go there. Yeah. It seems I had the same feeling when I finished my PhD, that I had to go my first job right away. But life is really long, and you have a lot of opportunities. So if you get an interesting postdoctoral position that really you think that can add you to as a person, as a scientist, I would advise, why not? Because at the end there is always time to go to the pharma. I don't know. Would you say, okay, this girl is 29, is too old? Would you say that?
No, it depends of the position. It depends of the right time, and what I would mean it's not a right answer to this question, because there are many examples and many experiences. So don't worry about this. So,
this is what I would suggest also. I think there's no rights or wrongs in things. I think it's also what you feel like, where you are, and personally where you want to go, and what you're feeling at the moment. And one thing that when Pedro was saying, it's not just you may be developing scientifically with another postdoc, but you also may be developing at the level of, you would be in another different institution, you develop other environments, other skills, right? So related to also these soft skills, you may be developing, maybe you want to be in another environment, develop other types of soft skills, get involved in other things. And so maybe the postdoc that you're thinking, you can also do that. So, there's no sets. What I think is clear is that there's no set way. So, you have to adjust a bit. Yeah. But I think it's very personal. If you want to go and do a postdoc because you still need to figure out some stuff, then I would say do a postdoc. So
let me share with you one. I hope she doesn't mind that I do that, because it's I will not say her name. Let me share with you one experience of a colleague of mine, a colleague from the same. We did the PhD together. We did the PhD in organic chemistry, basic organic chemistry in the University of Barcelona. Okay, she did a postdoctoral position in polymer science in Holland. Okay, very different from what she was doing in the doctoral thesis. And when she returned to Spain, she couldn't get a job at that level of scientific expertise in polymer science, because here there is no such huge industry as it was in Holland. So she moved to IP, to patent, to the patent department in a pharma industry. She started her professional career as a patent specialist. She grew in that position to patent attorney in a pharma industry, in a cosmetic industry, and at once she got the dream job. She's now in Belgium in a dream job in one of the best polymer industries in Belgium as a patent attorney there, because she has the profile of patent attorney and polymer knowledge that is very, very difficult to find.
Mhm.
Was she doing this postdoctoral position in purpose? Not at all, not at all. But at the end is what gave her this dream job. So
it goes back to the idea that you never know where opportunities arise, and you never know what's going to happen. So just be attentive to the opportunities that may arise, but it's so difficult to predict. So yeah.
Thank you. Going on to another question that we have from many of our attendees is whether you would recommend or you believe you need to have specific training or further training beyond science, more like business related, for project management or for business development. That is to say, master's degree in project management or get an MBA. Do you think that that is a necessary requirement? What is
No.
your experience as well?
In my opinion, no, it's not necessary, because I think you can have those experience, these experiences in science, and rework them and be able to do the job without going through extra training. But if you want to do the extra training, you can do the extra training, but I wouldn't say it's necessary, no. That's my opinion.
So I would say yes. So I'm professor in the master in project management. I'm the professor of project management in pharma. So I have to, and I think that it's we add to that. So I would say not just to get this kind of courses just for doing that. No, I agree with you that you can also learn a lot by going alone in the way and learning by experience, learning by doing. Nowadays, learning by doing is very important. But if you really want to go for it, there is some level of knowledge on the technical side of the management part that I think that we can provide in this kind of masters of project management. Mm-hmm. Myself, when I get that position of project management in Ferrer, I got the feeling that I needed some extra help. So I went to a business school asking for a master in project management, and they convinced me to do an MBA. So I did an MBA instead of the master in project management. But within this MBA, there was a part dealing with project management, and I realized that was my best part. The part that most interesting for me. But I think that if you want to go, if you want to focus on that, I think that this extra knowledge can be provided by this kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think this is personal, and I think it depends a lot on the people. I'm a learning by doing person. I learn a lot on my own. I mean, it's again one of those things. If a person is more into learning by external, say by training, I learn. Yeah, I mean, I learn a lot on the job. I've learned a lot. I mean, I remember my first month. I thought I was going to have my head was going to explode. There was a lot of learning very fast. But this is really dependent. What I'm saying, I think I see that it's useful, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. That's just my opinion.
Well, a good start is take advantage of the training provided from the centers or institutions, and also the BIST, and start a close understanding of the project management, and then you could deep more in this field if you are interested, or if you get a job, and then there are times that you could get an MBA or a master. But a good start could be these workshops or seminars that centers and BIST provide for the community.
That I totally recommend. That I think is a very good idea. Everything that is available to you, learn with that.
Profit,
use it.
Yeah, take advantage and take it.
Absolutely. That I totally agree. I was more,
Thank you. Moving forward, we have another question, which would be, what are the pros and cons of starting a career in a big company or in a startup?
very different.
I-
Okay, do you want to start?
Yeah, I say I could tell you very shortly. I've been working in companies like Bayer. In Bayer, in their central facility of Bayer, there was 30,000 employees, and I've been working in Spherium Biomed that we were 12 people working in an office. So I've been working in both sides. It's that kind of it's the typical metaphor that you are head of the rat, of tail of the lion, cabeza de ratón o cola de león. Yeah. If you work in a small, when I was working in a virtual pharmaceutical company within 12 people, I knew everything from the company. I had to do everything within the company. It was really interesting to grow by learning every single aspect of the company, of the projects itself. If we got financing, we were celebrating that same day because we know each other. Everything on that part. But on the back side, you have very little resources. You have to deal with a lot of constraints in terms of resources, pressures of time, and so on. It's also challenging. It's also good, but it's that environment. On the other part, when I was working in Bayer, I had all the tools, all the toys to play with. I could have them. I could ask. We have plenty of resources, plenty of people and instruments and so on, and absolutely excellence within the house. You didn't need anything at all, but you were a very little piece of the puzzle, a very, very small little piece of the puzzle. I would say that once said that, I think that you have to analyze yourself. Where do you want to play? Where do you feel more comfortable? Maybe you are a person that you feel comfortable in an environment like that one, that with 12 people with changing everything, but with a lot of constraints, but learning a lot by doing that. Or you feel comfortable being one small part of a absolute big and excellent structure. I've been working in both, and I feel I can feel comfortable in both, but you might prefer one of the other.
Yeah.
But both of them has pros and cons, so it's difficult to choose one from the other and say this is better than the other.
I would say also that 10 years ago, I could say that working in a large pharmaceutical company was more an stable position than in a small startup.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that nowadays. Nowadays, I would say both positions has I can be sure what will happen in 5 years' time, but I cannot say from any of them, not Sanofi, not Pfizer, not whatever, what will happen in 10 years.
Yeah, I agree.
And especially the departments, the people. I mean, there's a lot of changes. Yeah. I mean, the biggest difference is that, right? I mean, you in a startup, you do a bit of everything, and you are all, all together, kind of doing it all together. You have your roles, but you do a little bit of everything. You know everything. You have more of a say on where it's going. But yeah, it's stressful sometimes. It's very it's very active. It's very moves very fast. So yeah.
Thank you. Another question that we had from both from PhDs and postdocs, but it's basically how can you overcome or tackle the previous experience fear of finishing a PhD and not having previous experiences, or companies not considering that a postdoc is professional work. How can you tackle that?
Well, I think Niels explained that a little bit. You explain your competencies, and you explain that you do have the competencies to do the job. So you break it down into the competencies mostly.
And start looking for jobs that not require a lot of experience. So because there are a big gap then, it's difficult to reduce. So
yes,
that's
go for jobs that are somewhat of a fit. Don't go for things that are very difficult. I mean, that are very, very separate. So find within what's required, what's being asked, that you fit some of those criteria, and then the rest you can try to convince.
Thank you. Another question we got is, how is the digitalization of the labor market affecting positions such as, or impacting rather than affecting positions in business development or project management?
Sarah, would you like?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So when I always heard about digitalization and so on, I always remember a sentence of Xavier Marcet. This is very clever, that says that you don't have to fear artificial intelligence. You have to fear lack of natural intelligence. So everything that I heard about digitalization and so on, that okay, there is a fear there. Things are going to change. We are going to have less job opportunities and so on. I would say the other way around. So it's an opportunity. There will be even more opportunities for natural intelligence, for human intelligence. In the case of digitalization, I would say project manager. So a manager at the end is a coordinator and fosters collaboration and coordination. And digitalization is just bringing faster and more accurate data and faster data. That also helps to have fast more that requires even more coordination and more collaboration. So the role of the project management, I think that is even more important.
Yes.
Together with all the tools that digitalization brings. So.
Yes, exactly. I also think that it doesn't affect negatively at all if something is going to help out on some more tedious parts of the job. But then the capabilities that are key, which are these communication and empathy, understanding, together with the critical thinking and creativity, these are things that are not going to be, it's difficult to be afraid of digitalization with those type of skills that are needed. So I think, in fact, yeah, it can help the more tedious parts and make the job even more, to be able to produce more, to do more, and do better. So I wouldn't worry.
Yes, let me give you an extreme example, maybe. The case of digital therapies. So the fact that in the future, so it has been already approved by the FDA, a couple of therapies based on digital apps. So this is already here and will come even more. So if you think on that, the existence of digital therapies changed completely the pharma world. The pharma is a compound, is a biologic. The drug I'm chemist. So I might think, okay, I'm going to lose my job because if everything if we don't go for digital therapies, what's going to happen with the standard pharma and so on? So it's the other way around. So the digital therapies will add a new type of projects in our portfolio. There will be projects that for dealing with a standard the R&D development of a new drug, I would say we will need between 5 and 15 and 20 and 12 years to do the R&D. For a digital therapy, it might be a couple of years or just 1 year. So you need more efficient collaboration and coordination for that. And there will be new stakeholders that I couldn't imagine to be in the pharma industry.
Yeah.
Software engineers. I have to deal with software engineers now. And I dealing with that, it's even more important that the role of the project manager for that too. So something that at the beginning you might say, okay, it would be a problem. It's an opportunity for new things.
Yes, and for new avenues, right? I mean, there's many new opportunities that arise with this. So.
Thank you. Well, I think we're running a little bit out of time. I have 2 more questions, and then you might want to have a last shot at a comment. So obviously, we cannot avoid the circumstances we are living in. So a question is, how is this pandemic right now affecting positions or the labor market, and how do you think to the extent when you can, will be affecting the near future.
Well, I think that we can see an effect now, but I actually think in the future it will not. It will be actually. I think if there's one sector that is possibly going to be affected positively is health, because we're seeing how important health is and how important investment in health is. So, I mean, yes, we've been going through this phase. This is understandable. But there's a shift. I wouldn't say there's going to be a shift. It's a bit unclear what that shift is going to be. But I actually think that in terms of sectors, health is probably the one that is best positioned to for the post-COVID world. Let's say that's my personal feeling.
I would add to that. Thinking just in the very short and mid-term, just in a very short and mid-term, this is an unprecedented crisis. It's an unprecedented situation. It's not that we are dealing with a breakdown of the economy and so on. So things are stopped for a temporary time. So in the coming weeks, that might be less opportunities, but these opportunities are not dying. So they will appear after this confinement time. And probably, I being positive, I expect a peak of opportunities right in at the end of the year. Many things that nowadays are kind of asleep, that you cannot hang that because we are in confinement, but that are not dying, that will be ongoing, that will appear in his full potential at the end of the year. Think, for example, startup incorporations. For sure, there are many companies that could have been incorporated in the last month and in this month and next month. So these will be incorporated in September or October. It's not that we are missing these startup companies. So being positive, I think that now we are seeing a downsize of the sector and so, but I hope a peak at the end of the year.
I do too, because in fact we know that there's many things that are on hold. They're not stopped; they're on hold, and that hold will be lifted. So I see more being on hold, and I think those will come up, and maybe other things will also come up. So I think it's a shift, right? We are in a little bit of a hold situation, but it is not. That's they will come back, because a lot of these things are ongoing, and they will continue. So and maybe with some positive changes. I do believe that that's possible, that there's going to be some positive changes too.
And maybe there will be some more investment in the health sector and the biotech and industries, but not focus only on the big ones. Maybe the others in this sector.
Thank you. And our last question would be, how much science is there in your day-to-day work? You are still scientists in your positions right now. How much of it is part of your work right now?
Every day. Every day. Our projects are scientific, so you deal with science every day. In my case. I imagine with Pedro is similar.
Me too. And I'm doing, when I was scientist, I was dealing on my small part of medicinal chemistry. Nowadays, one day I'm reading a paper on clinical trials. One day I'm reading a paper on pharmacology, and so on. Maybe I have not that deep knowledge, but I have a broader knowledge nowadays.
Exactly my experience, and I actually like that. That's why I wanted to change in the first place. So we do, you get a little bit of all these, right? I mean, I work with hospitals, and then I work with clinical trials, and then I work with. So you are reading on articles about all sorts of things, right? On drugs going to market, on certain hospital doing a certain study. You're discussing the research with a researcher. There's a bit of everything. but yeah, you deal with it every day.
Yeah. So I would say I read almost every week for sure, a couple of papers for sure. I'm not writing them. So for many years, I write internal reports, internal proposals of new projects, all based on science, of course, and I write patents. That's maybe the difference when I was fully a scientist that nowadays. So, but for the rest is how you say.
Yeah, I don't write, but yeah, I evaluate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Maybe we can take advantage of these last minutes. And if you have one last message that you'd like to send to the BIST community and to those people listening, maybe we can start in the opposite direction as we started the webinar. And Neus, maybe you have a last remark you want to make?
Well, for me, a good advice would be prepared. Be prepared for this next step if you are thinking about it. And most important, be hopeful and be positive. Don't mean that you have to be happy 24 hours per day, all days. And doesn't mean rejecting negative thoughts. Just accept them, take your time to get there, and on hard days, you know that there are other better times coming. So just be positive in this way.
Thank you. Now, Sara?
Yes, so I agree a lot with what Nils just said. Yes, so yes, use the time to prepare yourself. Yes, be positive. Be also resilient, right? Some things will not work out, but think of it as part of the process is happening with everyone. And then there's one thing that I also think is very important. Find your support network, build your support network, because it's very important. It's very important. We're feeling it's very important now, where we're passing this phase right now. It's going to also be very important if you are going to do a career transition. So use that same type of support that maybe you've been feeling at the moment, and take it further. And yes, it's everything is going to work out. Just take the opportunities and go with it.
Okay, so and my last message would be, I was asked a couple of weeks ago, how do I see the innovation in the time post-COVID? And my first answer was, it's going to be much more collaborative and much more agile. It's already collaborative and agile, but it's going to be even much more. We are seeing that right now. And for that, for collaborate, you need a couple of things. First, common knowledge, and that you get from the scientific background. And for the collaborative, you need also coordination that you get from the kind of managerial part. And in the agility, I agree absolutely with Sara. You need flexibility, but you need also resilience. It's not only flexibility. You need to persist and to be resilient. So, and as I mentioned, my first message was, you never know. So think always that you never know. So let's try it. So as Sara said, you said that, no? Go for it. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't wait to be ready. You're never ready. We're never ready. We just do what we can. We do our best.
Well, it was nice to end this on a positive note, especially under the circumstances. So thank you again, Neus, Pedro, and Sara, for your time and collaboration with the BIST Career webinar. We really hope you enjoyed participating as much as we did listening to your opinions and experience. For those still in the session, we will soon be sharing the recording of this session through the BIST social media channels. And in the meantime, we suggest you stay tuned for our next career webinar, which will be held in 2 weeks' time. On behalf of BIST, I wish you a wonderful evening, and we hope that you and your loved ones stay safe and healthy. Until next time, thank you.